This is the Louie T Network.
Draft Zone. Draft Zone.
Welcome, you are in the lab room. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me. 2014 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series. For those of you who don't know how this works, it's simple. We're using the baseball grading scale here to break down the 2014 NFL Draft of every single team in the National Football League. Single, double, triple, home run. There are no strikeouts in the Draft Wrap-Up Series because we do not know how these players are going to turn out. And so we'll grade each team player by player, average up the scores, get an aggregate score for each and every single team, and then we'll move on to the next team, and it's who's next format during the Draft Wrap-Up Series, which means if you want your team to be next, simply all you have to do is be the first. That's the key. Be the first to leave a comment in the comment section of this video when it is posted stating that you want your team to be next and the team in question. So a quick example, you would leave a comment that says next, Green Bay Packers, or we got next, Texans, or Tampa Bay Bucks next. That would be a simple, sufficient winner for the who's next format. And so without any further ado, let's get to the proceedings this evening. We're here, Draft Wrap-Up Series 2014 NFL Draft of the St. Louis Rams. And we know all about this draft and how well it started and how controversial it ended. And so let's get right to the proceedings this evening. Of course, I've got the help of my handy dandy pointer in the big board. Let's get to work and talk about the 2014 draft of the St. Louis Rams. They're making headway in this division. It doesn't seem like it. It's not showing up in wins and losses, but this is a football team that's getting better each and every single year. The thing that always seems to hold them back is Sam Bradford the guy? Is he not the guy? Is he going to stay healthy? Is he not going to stay healthy? These are questions that you don't know the answer to year from year. And it seems that he always seems to get injured. And this is a big year for Sam Bradford. This is a big year for the St. Louis Rams. So let's look at the draft and see how they look to supplement this team that I already think is pretty talented in its own right. So you start first round, second pick. Offensive tackle out of Auburn, Greg Robinson. And this was a no doubter, just about. This was a cinch. And this was a big if the Rams did not trade out of 2, I think Greg Robinson was the pick all along. And, you know, they took the trip to Texas A&M, and I think that was sort of a smoke screen to kind of scare some teams up to potentially come up and get a Johnny Manziel, or to get a Mike Evans, or to get a Jake Matthews. I thought that was a smoke screen of sorts, because when it was all said and done, they had 2 picks in the first 13, and neither one of them went on a Texas A&M product. So, of course, you got to do your due diligence. You got to do your homework. And if they were to trade out to, say, 7, maybe one of those Texas A&M products comes into play. But at 2, I think the pick here was always going to be Greg Robinson, the tackle out of Auburn. To me, the tackle with the most upside. Is he the most NFL ready of all the tackles in this draft? No, I don't think that to be the case at all. I think you could make a case for Taylor Lewan. You could make a case for Jake Matthews as being way more polished and ready to go as is day number 1. However, if we're talking 5 or 7 years down the road, this guy's probably going to be the better of those 3 tackles. And so that's why you couldn't afford to pass him up if you were the St. Louis Rams. And again, you don't know where they have him in mind in terms of where they want to play him. He could be a tackle. He could be a guard. Either one. Look, normally you don't spend the 2nd overall selection in the draft on a guard. That's just generally what you do not do. However, it could be the case where they feel like, hey, we're going to get some more production out of a guy we spent a lot of money on to come here, and Jake Long. You look at Saffold, he's been at right tackle before. He can go back to right tackle, and that could be a place where they decide to play him. And so you look at the guard positions and say, hey, why not kick Greg Robinson inside until we need his services outside? That could be something that they explore. But let's talk about the football player Greg Robinson for a second. Here's a guy that played at Auburn, and they played an up-tempo style of offense, a lot of read option, a lot of up-tempo, fast-paced, looking over to the sideline, getting the play and running it, very quick-paced. And this was a team that scored a lot of points with Trey Mason in the backfield, and their system, they really ran the football well, and he was a catalyst for them, a road grader, a power blocker in terms of in the run game, is very athletic. I think that's something that people really focused in on, was a man his size being able to move as fast as he could and can. And so he's a guy that I think at the combine kind of solidified what he was in this draft. And you saw him playing against elite competition week in, week out in the SEC, holding his own week after week after week. The reason why the Auburn offense was so successful was because of guys like Greg Robinson up front doing the dirty work, keeping the quarterback clean, Marshall and company back there being able to run that read option and do option plays, because of guys like Greg Robinson getting to the 2nd level, getting to their 3rd level, getting the initial blocks, opening up gaping holes. And Greg Robinson, not only can he hold his own in the run game, the guy can also get it done in the passing game as well. He moves his feet. Again, the athleticism translates to the field. This isn't one of those guys where he tests out great, but when you get on the field, he looks kind of lead-footed and everything looks a little slower than it does when he's out in a t-shirt and shorts. No, this guy has all of the things working in unison when it is time for it to take place on the field. And so he moves the feet well, has a strong base, good hands, good feet. Everything looks the part of a top 5 pick in Greg Robinson. And so he's not ready, like I said at the top. He's not ready in terms of in the other 2 tackles that I mentioned, in Taylor Lewan and Jake Matthews. He's not ready to step in day one and be as polished as those other 2 are. But if you're talking about a guy that you want to mold and you want to get your hands on, because he's still a raw product, not a finished product yet, you get your hands on him, you get him to do the things that you want him to do, you teach him and coach him up the correct way. Here's a guy that in 3 years could be an all-pro in this league, and in 10 years we could be talking about this guy getting a bust in the Hall of Fame. He's got that type of potential. But again, potential gets coaches fired. They need Greg Robinson to come in, learn the game quickly, transition from the speed of college to the speed of the NFL, and they need him to come in and play lights-out football along that offensive line and protect Sam Bradford, something that the Rams have struggled to do since Sam Bradford has entered into the NFL. So this is an easy one. This is by far one of the better offensive linemen in this draft. And so in the 1st round, 2nd overall selection, tackle out of Auburn, Greg Robinson is a home run. You know what this is. I don't have to tell you what this is. This is an absolute no-doubter, deep, deep drive. It's hit hard. It's hit deep. Out of here. It's a home run. So you move on to the 2nd first-round selection, and that first one came via the Robert Griffin III trade. And so you go to the 2nd first-round pick of the St. Louis Rams, and it's pick 13, defensive tackle out of Pitt, Aaron Donald. Never, ever trust a man with 2 first names. Aaron Donald is a dangerous, dangerous man. And he plays that 3 technique like no other in this draft, and he can get pressure on the quarterback. He can knife in and be disruptive in the backfield, in the running game. He does it all. Is he a little undersized? Sure he is. But I'm not holding that against him because he uses that leverage to his advantage. And he uses his quickness because he is a smaller guy. We're talking about a 6 foot, 285, 290 pound defensive tackle. Sure, that's a little light. But again, if you put him in the right scheme, and he will be in the right scheme in St. Louis, that is for sure. You put him in the right scheme around some guys that are playmakers where he's not getting double teamed, he's going to win one-on-one matchups. And that's why this is the perfect fit for Aaron Donald, because if you put him on a team where the ends aren't getting pressure, where the quarterback is allowed to drop back and he can't get pressure up the middle and have that quarterback stay there because the edges are folding in on him and that pocket is collapsing. If he's allowed to be double teamed because there's no one else on the line worth talking about, then he's not going to be as effective. But when you put him around other guys that are playmakers, like he will be in St. Louis with Quinn and Long, and then you got another #1 pick right next to him in Brockers, you slide him in right next to that guy, and all of a sudden you've got a problem on your hands. This is a guy that had double-digit sacks from the defensive tackle position at Pitt in 2013. Again, it's hard to manufacture double-digit sack totals in the interior of a defensive line. It's just tough to do. But when you've got the talent like an Aaron Donald, quick first step, great explosion and burst. The guy ran a 4.6 40. Are you kidding me? At 285 pounds, the guy ran a 4.6 40, and it looked fluid, it looked easy, it looked effortless. I mean, the guy is an athletic marvel. You talk about adding a guy like Aaron Donald to a defensive front that is already among the best in the league, and you look around and you say, oh my goodness, NFC West, we have a problem. And his name is Aaron Donald, first round, 13th overall selection, defensive tackle out of Pitt. To me, you can put it on the board. Yes! It's a home run, deep upper deck, no doubt about it. Rams, they didn't miss in the first round. Not a single pitch. They got both of them. They knew what they were looking for. Straight gassers, fastballs right down the middle. They were sitting on them. Yeah. Yeah, those are gone. Long gone. They're not coming back. 2 back-to-back jacks for the St. Louis Rams in the first round. So you move on to the second round. Pick 41, defensive back out of Florida State, LaMarcus Joyner. And the reason why I classify him as a defensive back at Florida State, he was a safety. But they dropped him down into the slot. He's got the ability to play corner. And I think that's what the Rams are probably looking to do with him at the next level is use him as a hybrid, a guy that can move around on the field, can play some safety for you if you need him to, will show up on the field in nickel and dime situations, drop over the slot, play the slot, can drop back and, again, play a deep half, can play that single high safety if need be. This is a guy that moves around with reckless abandon, flies around to the football. I love his game because he's a sideline-to-sideline player. There's not a lot of holes in his game. The only thing that stopped this guy from being a first-round pick is his size. He's not an overly big guy. We're talking about a guy that's 5'9", 5'10", so not really big. And he's closer to 5'9" to me than 5'10". And so his size is something that is a detriment to him, but only because of other guys that he's going up against. Not because he allows that to factor into him making a play or not making a play. It's just because in the NFL, you know how it is, the guys don't get any smaller. They only get bigger. And so now instead of him going up against receivers that are 6 feet, that are 5'11", that are 6'1", that are 6'2", now you're going up against Larry Fitzgerald, who's 6'4". Now you're going up against Michael Floyd, who's 6'3", and some change, going on 6'4". Now you're going up against Sidney Rice, who's 6'4". Now you're going up against Calvin Johnson, who's 6'5". These are guys that he's going to have to try to stop. It's going to be tough because they're big, big men. However, he's not afraid. That's the thing you love about LaMarcus Joyner. Now, another thing is he's a slanger. And I don't like when guys come in and they're slangers. And what I mean by slangers, they're guys who like to grab and throw you down to the ground. That doesn't work in the National Football League. You don't get to be a slanger. You can be a slanger in college because you got a lot of frail body boys that don't like to live in the weight room. And so they're 185 pounds. They're a buck 97. And even if they're 205 pounds, it's still not a stout 205. It's more like I'm 6'4", so by default, I'm 205 pounds. In the NFL, guys are jacked. Anquan Bolden, jacked. You mean big physical receivers that you can't run up and grab him up. He's a guy that likes to go head hunting, will grab you up top, and I want to see him wrap guys up, come up, make form tackles. He's a heat-seeking missile. He's a guy that flies around. So he's running around at maximum speed. He only knows one speed, and that's 5th gear. And so when you're running that fast, hard to stop. So sometimes he'll reach out, grab a guy, and it'll be all up here around the neck. A lot of times in the National Football League, you're going to get face mask penalties doing that. You're going to get horse collar penalties doing that. Or you're just going to flat out miss. And so I'd like to see him come under control a little bit more and kind of harness all of that energy, all of that speed, all of that intensity that he brings to the field. I'd like to see him harness that into controlled chaos, okay? And I'd like to see him come up and make more form tackles and not be a slanger, because you don't get to be a slanger at this level. You miss tackles in this league if you think you're going to throw guys down to the ground. You're just going to grab them, they're going to throw you off to the side, and they're going to keep on moving about their business. So if LaMarcus Joyner can become a more controlled athlete in terms of running to the football and taking his time, breaking down properly, and making sound tackles, and not just flying around sideline to sideline with blind fury. If he can slow it down, slow the game down, and make smart decisions and make sound tackles, the Rams have themselves a football player, a guy that can play both safety and the cornerback position, mainly the slot. And in this league, you got to have a guy that can man up the slot position. If you don't have a slot corner on your team, you're going to be in a lot of trouble, because just about every team in this league can run out 3 receivers, and they have that guy in the slot that's hard to contain. If you can't stop him, you're going to be in trouble. LaMarcus Joyner is going to provide them with a guy that can cover the slot and double as a safety as well. I love the pick. It's a solid pick. In the 2nd round, 41st overall selection, corner/safety, so defensive back out of Florida State. LaMarcus Joyner is a triple for me. It's a 3-bagger in the 2nd round. Like the pick, think it's a really good move here, and it's going to help them fortify this defense in the back half. We already know the front 7 is one of the elites in this league. Now you got to try to fortify that back half and have it match up with what the front 4, or front 7, excuse me, is doing in St. Louis. So you move on to the 3rd round, 75th overall selection, running back out of Auburn, Trey Mason. And so he links up with the guy that was opening up gaping holes and spaces for him in the running game at Auburn, and Greg Robinson. Trey Mason is a guy that I think they look at and envision him being someone that comes in and is a dual threat with a guy that I thought played extremely well last year in Zach Stacy. And Zach Stacy's more of a physical, in between the tackles runner, whereas Trey Mason is going to be someone that they feel like, hey, he can run in between the tackles, but we'd like to get this guy on the edges. He's a little bit faster than Zach Stacy. And so I think the 40 times scared some teams off a little bit, and because his production last year, and yeah, it was a wide open offense, it was fast paced, and so caught some teams off guard. Teams were worn down by the end of the game, and so maybe his numbers were inflated a bit, but it doesn't matter. The guy went out and produced, and watching him on tape and watching him during the games, you thought he was a little bit faster than what he timed out to be. I think he ended up being a 4.5 40 type of guy. And so people probably expected him to be more of a 4.47, 4.45 type of back. And so when he ran 4.5, they said, we'll wait on him. And so he's got some holes in his game, but the guy is dynamic. He makes plays. He can catch the football out of the backfield. I think the biggest knock on him that everybody has is, because a lot of people don't envision him as an every down back, and rightfully so. I don't think he's built. And you know what? You look at his build, and this guy is thick. His trunks are thick. He's solidly built, low center of gravity. I think it's a misconception because he looks kind of diminutive that he's not well built, but he's built like Maurice Jones-Drew built. I mean, he's solid, he's stocky, he's thick, and so he's not a small guy. But I don't think in this day and age that you can get away unless you've got a special back. You don't really want to have one guy that's taking all of the carries and taking a bulk load of the carries unless you have an Adrian Peterson on your team. You know, and most people don't have an Adrian Peterson. There are not many of those left. They don't make those anymore. Hell, we can't even get a back in the first round anymore. So you got to have two backs. You got to have running backs by committee in some instances. And so he's going to come in, look to get some of that third down work for this Rams team. But if he's going to get onto the field, he's got to be better at pass pro. I mean, it's no secret that he can't pass block to save his life. That's something he's going to have to work on. And it's not the end-all, be-all. It's not like that's something that you either have or you don't. He can work on that. He can get better at it. That's something that he's going to have to work on. If he's going to get on the field in St. Louis in his rookie season, it's going to be on third downs, because if Zach Stacy is healthy, he's going to get the lion's share of the carries on first and second down. Where he's going to come into play is on third downs. But if he can't pass protect, he won't be on the field in his rookie season. So he's going to have to make that transition, and he's going to have to protect the quarterback in pass pro. And yeah, leak out, catch a screen, get some draws and some delays and make some things happen that way. But his first priority when he steps on the campus in St. Louis is to start learning how to pass pro, how to pick up blitzes, who's his key, how does he get in front of that guy. I don't care how you stop him from getting to the quarterback. If you got to cut block him, if you got to go stonewall him, whatever you got to do, do it. But he's got to learn how to be more proficient in the pass protection game. So Trey Mason, solid pickup out of Auburn. I think he's going to bring another dimension to this Rams offense. They already cut Darrell Richardson loose because of Trey Mason, and they were looking to move Isaiah Peed. So I think the Rams feel really good about what he's going to bring to the table. We know this guy was a high production guy at Auburn, and I think they're looking for him to come in and add another dimension to their offense. Third round, 75th overall selection, running back out of Auburn, Trey Mason for me. Because I don't think he's going to have an immediate impact because he can't block in the passing game, this should be a triple, but I'm downgrading it to a double because I don't know if he's getting on the field right away. I think long term, this is probably a triple, but I still have my reservations about him, about all the things that he brings to the table. And so I think from a production standpoint, he's a double on its own merit. His production and what he brings to the table is a double. If he could get on the field and produce for you right away, it'd be a triple. But right now, I just don't see that being the case. So in the third round, Trey Mason for me is a two-bagger. It's a double. Solid double. Easily could have been a triple, but I just don't buy him really contributing to this football team right away in 2014. So you move on to the fourth round, 110th overall selection. Safety out of Utah, Maurice Alexander, to be more specific. And so Mo Alexander for me is a guy that I watched on tape. And I watched a lot of Utah State tape. And it's funny because in this league, in this day and age, the lines are becoming blurred between strong safety and free safety. You got to be able to do a little bit of both. I mean, you've got to be able to come down in the box, lay the hammer, and then be 25 yards away from the ball, from the line of scrimmage, and make a play on the football. And so it's becoming increasingly harder to differentiate between strong safety and free safety. But even though that I say that, you still have, I think, clear delineation between the two. I mean, you look at the Seahawks, for instance, because they have the best defense. I'll go there and use them. And you can relate to this. They're in your division. So you look at Earl Thomas. He's clearly the free safety on that football team. He's the single high safety. They play a triangle defensive look where he's the top of that defense. He's the furthest back. He's deeper than the deepest. He keeps everything in front of him. And so by default, he's the free safety. But Earl Thomas will lay the hammer on you in a split second. Think he won't? Try him and see if he will. And so he's able to give you both free safety and strong safety capabilities. Cam Chancellor, perfect example of why he's the quintessential strong safety in this league. You put him in the box, you watch him work. He's like another linebacker, a functional defensive lineman, but just like another linebacker when you put him in the box. You take him out of the box. In the Super Bowl, Wes Welker ran a route, went across his face. He makes a beautiful play on the football, out in space, knocks it down. It was a big play at that time in the game because, again, you didn't want to give the Broncos any momentum. He showed the ability to drop into coverage, turn his hips, make a play on the football like a free safety, but we know he is a strong safety. So you got to be able to do both. I look at Mo Alexander, and I see a guy that is more comfortable closer to the line of scrimmage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my marker, I'm going to open the cap, and I'm going to put an S behind the other S. I left that blank for a reason because he's just a safety. But if you ask me, he's a strong safety. You already have one of those on your team, but you can never have too many because this guy, I think he brings a different skill set. Now, what I think he does well is he comes up to the line of scrimmage. He acts as another linebacker. And again, you got TJ McDonald, who I think is better closer to the line of scrimmage. And Mo Alexander is the same type of safety. Close up to the line of scrimmage, he's deadly. I think he blitzes better than TJ McDonald does because this is a guy that at Utah State, they used him coming up to the line of scrimmage and he'd creep up there and he would blitz, and he times his blitzes well. He finds a way to get into crevices, into gaps, and get to the quarterback. I love when he's blitzing. I think that's when he's at his best, when he's around the line of scrimmage. But also what Utah State did with him is they kept him back as the single high safety a lot. And he'd be the guy that was deep and wanted to keep him back there, and he'd be the guy looking for the kill shot when the ball went up top or over the top of the defense. He'd be the guy that they try to send over there to send a message, hey, if you're going to throw it deep, your guy's going to have to take a lick. But he's always a step late to the party. He's the guy that after you've already cracked open 6 kegs, he wants to show up with a bag of chips. Hey, nobody wants chips anymore. We're all drunk. You're late, okay? And sure, you could show up with a case of beer. You can never have enough, but you're late. Fact of the matter is, I don't want any chips anymore. The chip period of the party was a long time ago. Now, everybody else is doing something else. You're late. And that's Mo Alexander. He's always late to the party. He's always a step late. So, in pass coverage, I'm not in love with this guy. But you put him up close to the line of scrimmage, and the dude is an animal. And the perfect example of him laying the lumber, because he comes with an aggressive approach every single time he comes to make a tackle. He's looking to be physical. And he used to be a linebacker. He gets suspended. He punched a teammate in the face, gets suspended, thrown off the team for an entire year. He comes back, and he's a safety. So you got 1.0, Mo Alexander, the linebacker. He comes back 2.0 after the suspension, and he's a safety. And so he still has linebacker mentality, however. And against Fresno State, and remember, Derek Carr, quarterback of Fresno State, Devontae Adams, receiver. A lot of guys that got drafted in the National Football League this past year play for Fresno State, so that's a great tape to pop in if you want to watch. But there was a crucial 4th down at the time in the game. They were looking to pick up a 1st down, and they come on a play on the outside, and Mo Alexander comes off the pace about 10, 15 yards. He diagnoses the play, reads it. They're going outside. Guys fighting for extra yardage, trying to pick up that last yard for the 1st down. He comes and stones them right in his tracks. They don't pick up the 1st down. Turnover on downs. That's the type of football player Mo Alexander is in a nutshell. I love what he brings to the table when he's 10 yards and in within the line of scrimmage. You make him go backwards 20 yards, 25 yards off the ball, and he becomes less effective. And because of that, in the 4th round, 110th overall selection out of Utah State, Mo Alexander for me is a double. I like this guy. I like him a lot. But he doesn't do all of the things I think that's necessary. He's got what you call a specialized role on a defense, and he would be a strong safety. I don't think he really gives you what you're looking for at the free safety position. I think he's more of a... Now, can he grow into a free safety and do a little bit of both? Maybe. But I think he's more comfortable around the line of scrimmage, being nosy in the run game, blitzing and getting after the quarterback, and being a nuisance up around the line of scrimmage. That's where he's going to be better served in the National football league. But I'll tell you what, he's a Jeff Fisher type of player because he's physical, he's aggressive, and he's mean. He's nasty. I don't like him because he's mean. He's one of those guys that, you know, whistles being blown and he tries to act like he doesn't hear. He's mean. But that's what you want on the defensive side of football. You want players that are mean. And Mo Alexander is mean. And so you move on to the 6th round. 188th overall selection, cornerback out of Mizzou, E.J. Gaines. And here's a guy that, for many, his skill set may say that he was supposed to go in the 3rd round or even in the 2nd round or maybe in the 4th round. But I think a lot of people tried to ding him for his height. They say, oh, he's not big enough. And people kill me with this. Oh, he's not big enough. He's not this. He's not that. Since when is 5'10" not big enough for a corner? I mean, yeah, I know receivers are big these days. 6'3", 6'4", 6'5". I get it. But 5'10" is around average height for a corner. I mean, most corners are 5'10", 5'11", 6 feet. That's usually what you're going to get. Anything over 6 foot for a corner and you're big. And I know that's where the NFL is heading now, to these bigger corners. But there's something to be said about guys with lower center of gravities that have better agility, that can get in and out of breaks, that can break on the football, that can be around receivers when they're coming. Because you get some guys that can run some pretty good routes now. You got to be able to cut on a dime, stop, flip your hips, make a play on the football to keep up with some of these guys that are technicians at the receiver position. So it kills me when people keep telling me, oh, this guy's too small. That's hogwash. What happens when your corner's 6'2" and he can't flip his hips? And he's getting beat because he's too slow out of his breaks and he can't move his feet and stop and start like these smaller corners. E.J. Gaines for me is a solid corner. I think what knocked him, what made him a 6th round pick ultimately, was a lack of top end speed. That's what I think made him a 6th round pick versus a 4th or a 3rd round selection, is the fact that the guy isn't that fast. And so you watch him, he's a willing tackler. That's what I think drew him to Jeff Fisher. You know Jeff Fisher likes his corners aggressive in the run game. And E.J. Gaines isn't afraid to mix it up. So I think right there, that endeared him to Jeff Fisher and his coaching staff right there. He makes plays on the football. Is his hands the best? No, but he can catch the football. You make a mistake around E.J. Gaines, he'll make you pay for it. Now, what I think he lacks, again, top end speed, and he lacks the ability to sometimes locate the football when in coverage. And because he doesn't have top end speed, you get nervous when he wants to come up and press. He plays a lot of off coverage. And again, a lot of times when guys don't trust their abilities, they know they're not the fastest, they want to play off. When you play off, you give up free yardage. But the guys that really annoy me are the ones, okay, fine, you're not fast, and you know you're not fast, so you play off. The guys that annoy me are the guys that aren't fast, that play off and don't anticipate. So they allow guys to eat up their cushion. You're already not fast, so if a guy eats up your cushion, guess what? He gets even, he's leaving because you're not fast enough to keep pace with him. So you give the cushion so that if they decide to test you deep, you're able to stay on top of them and nothing gets behind you. And I think E.J. Gaines does that well. His problem is when they're running the shorter routes, he wants to make sure that he's not being beat deep. So he'll give you the space that's necessary to give up a 7-yard slant, to give up a 8-yard dig route. He'll give up the intermediate routes because he doesn't want to get beat deep, and I don't blame him for that. But at some point, you got to say, all right, look, I got safety help over the top. You're going to have to challenge me. You're going to have to beat me. And so I want to see him be more aggressive at the line of scrimmage, challenging these receivers. If you don't have safety help, I get it. Okay, I get it. You don't want to get beat over the top. Totally understand. I'd much rather you give up a 12-yard play than a 62-yard touchdown. Absolutely. Every single time I'll take it. So I like his feistiness. He's got to come up and be more of a form tackler. He's one of these guys that likes to come in and throw the shoulder around. Yeah, that works in college. But again, at the next level, see what you're hitting, wrap up, form tackle, come up, grab some legs, shoot the cuffs, get him on the ground. I don't mind that. But you come up, you're starting to throw the shoulder around, guys bounce off of you like pinballs at the next level. I mean, guys are bigger, they're faster, they're stronger, they'll make you look stupid out in space. So you got to come, see what you're hitting, break down, and make form tackles. If he does that, because he's not afraid. That's the one thing. He's not afraid. He's not afraid to come up and make a tackle. And so when you already are equipped with the mentality that I'm trying to go lay the lumber on somebody, that's always a prerequisite to coming up and making a tackle, is the ability to want to make tackles. Just like rebounding in basketball, tackling at the cornerback position requires want to. And E.J. Gaines wants to make tackles at the cornerback position. He'll make plays on the football. Had 5 interceptions this past season, by far his best total. So he's starting to become nosier as a cornerback. I like that. But again, he needs to be more aggressive in the passing game and stop giving up so many easy completions. But in the 6th round, 188th selection overall, cornerback out of Mizzou, E.J. Gaines for me. Another solid double by this Rams football team, continuing to get guys that are making solid contributions to this draft. You look at another 6th round selection, 214th, quarterback out of SMU, Garrett Gilbert, quarterback out of SMU. And I remember this guy. See, this is my problem. When I evaluated him, all I could think about was the guy that I saw at Texas that struggled, that couldn't stay on the field, that couldn't, differentiate himself from the rest of the quarterbacks there. And so you go to SMU, they simplify the offense for you. June Jones is out there having you throw a whole bunch of passes close to the line of scrimmage. I mean, you look at his completion percentage and it's way up there because everything is dink and dunk. Everything is nickel and dime, short, hitches, slants. I mean, everything is short. Bubbles, screens, you name it, that's what they're doing. But I looked at him and I said, oh, the guy's still athletic. He can still run. He'll tuck it and run on you in a heartbeat. I saw him throw a couple of passes down the field, and I'm like, hey, why don't you do that more? You actually aren't that bad. The arm is there. He can zip it when he needs to. My problem with him is this. He needs to be in a West Coast offense. If he's not in a West Coast offense where everything is dink and dunk, you saw when he was at Texas and they gave him more of the playbook and they asked him to do something that he wasn't comfortable with, he struggled. He goes to SMU. They dumb down the playbook. They simplify everything for him. Everything's quick. Check downs, hitches, slants, bubble screens, everything's 5, 7, 10 yards and in. And he is successful at that. So what that tells me is that he isn't a guy that you want to throw a lot at. But at the next level, you got to be able to work complex offenses. You got to be able to go 7-step drop, 5-step drop. You got to be able to go 3-step drop, ball quick out of your hand. You got to be able to do everything. You can't just be a guy that's nickel and diamond. Hey, you want to be Alex Smith? That's fine because that's who he reminds me of. But Alex Smith also can drive the football down the field. You say what you want about Alex Smith. And I give him a hard time. I call him, Captain, check down. I give him a hard time. But Alex Smith, when necessary, can drive the football down the field. He doesn't have a problem doing that. And so I need to see more of that from Garrett Gilbert. I'm not really comfortable with him driving the football down the field yet because I don't see it enough. I don't know if that's a part of his game that he's comfortable with because I don't see it enough. Everything's short. Everything's intermediate. He is athletic, though. I do like that. But he's one of these guys that if it's not short, if he doesn't like what he sees, he's tucking it and running. And I have a problem with that. So in the 6th round, 214th overall selection, quarterback out of SMU, Garrett Gilbert for me. He's a reclamation project, a guy that you got to really work with closely. I feel like if he's given time, and you work with him closely, and you highlight his strengths, and you work on the weaknesses, maybe down the road he can be a serviceable backup. I don't know if he's ever going to be starter material in this league, but for me, he's a single. I don't see the upside right now. I'm not really that impressed with what I see. I need to see more. So he's a single for me in the 6th round. You move on to the 7th round, where the Rams had 4 7th-round picks and made a historic pick. We'll get to that one a little bit later, but you start 226th overall selection, tackle out of Portland State, Mitchell Van Dyke. And man, this was a hard eval here. This is a hard watch. I hate watching tape of guys that play at really small schools because it looks like high school. It's really cloudy and foggy and muggy. It's just hard to see stuff. You don't know what you're looking at half of the time. This was a hard eval, but what I did see is some of the tape, and thankfully they played on ESPN 1 or 2 times, and I was able to, or excuse me, Comcast once or twice, and I was able to get some clean footage of this guy. But what I did see from him is he's sluggish to me. You remember when the Dolphins were on Hard Knocks 2 years back, and the coaches were making fun of one of the receivers. They called him ankle weights because he looked like he was stuck in the mud and he looked like he was running in slow motion. That's what I got from Mitchell Van Dyke. Guys were running circles around him at the tackle position. And he's mean. He's got a mean disposition about himself. He's good in the run game, but in the passing game, man, I felt like guys were running laps around him. He was slow out of his stance, and he just looked slow of foot, and he just looked like he was in slush. Like, slush. That's how I felt when I was watching him. Like, you know how your mouth is dry and you... That's how I felt when I was watching him, just like he was stuck. And I'm not feeling Mitchell Van Dyke. I'm not going to lie to you. He's a project. He's a guy that's going to be a long shot to make this roster. He's a 7th-round pick, so you know how that goes. For me, 226th overall selection, tackle out of Portland State. Mitchell Van Dyke is a single, another one-bagger for the Rams. I could easily see this guy making the practice squad or not making this team at all, but hard for me to see him making this roster as one of the 53 best players on this St. Louis Rams football team when you start making cuts in the summertime. You go to the next 7th-round selection, 241st overall, safety out of Ohio State, C.B. Bryant. Here's a guy that missed a good portion of the 2013 season, broke his ankle in the Wisconsin game, and so you had to go back on him for the tape. You know, and I found it hard to go back because I wanted to see something relevant with him. I wanted to see why he was in the 7th round. Well, I think, number one, he got injured. So you didn't get to see him work out. He wasn't at the combine, didn't do a pro day. He's still nursing that injury. So you didn't get to see him. And you know how this is. What have you done for me lately? It's Janet Jackson. Dun, 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 dun. What have you done for me lately? And C.B. Bryant hasn't done anything. Christian Bryant hasn't done anything for anyone since week 5 of the college football season. So the last time I saw you, you might have been a 3rd-round pick. You don't play for, 2 months, the last 2-3 months of the season, and I can't see you in the offseason. Now you're a 7th-round pick. That's how it goes. That's how the cookie crumbles in the National Football League. But another knock on this guy, he's 5'9", at the safety position. And to me, he didn't do anything great. So he's not better in the box. He's better away from the box, away from the line of scrimmage, away from the action. So, much like I did earlier, I'm going to take the cap off my marker, and I'm going to put an F next to that S and give him the distinction of being a free safety, because I don't think he's a guy that you want coming into the box and having to lay the hammer. Now, he will come up. He's not afraid. He will come up and help in run support. That's not an issue, but that's not his strong suit. He's better 15, 20 yards away from the ball as a deep half safety, a guy that can cover a tight end. Again, his problem is he's 5'9". So if you get a tight end at 6'4" that knows how to use his body, what is this guy going to do at 5'9"? He can't stop him from boxing him out. And I'll give you an example. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers now have 6'5" Vincent Jackson, 6'5" Mike Evans, and 6'5" tight end Austin Seferian-Jenkins. What is he going to do to either one of those guys at 5'9"? Question? Answer, nothing. He can't stop them from catching the football if they use their body. So that's where his deficiencies lie. The injury is a major concern for most teams. That's why he was in the 7th round and available. And his height, his size is an issue. And he's not aggressive enough for me at that safety position for that 5'9" height to not be an issue. When guys are aggressive and they get to the football before a guy can box him out and they use anticipation, then the height goes away. The question of height, I mean, Jason Verrett. Look, we saw Jason Verrett be a guy that is 5'8", 5'9" at TCU, but he got drafted in the 1st round. You want to know why? Because the guy is physical, the guy anticipates, and he makes plays on the football. When you're a safety and you wait around and you allow guys to get on top of you and make plays, it's hard for you to make that distinction that, hey, even though I'm smaller, I can still make plays on the football. So for me, C.B. Bryant, being that he hasn't played in such a long time, I don't know what he's going to look like after that ankle injury. I can't give him anything more than a single. Being a 7th round pick, having the height deficiency, having the injury, you couple all of that together, just don't know what the future lies for him in St. Louis. It's a single for C.B. Bryant, Christian Bryant, safety out of Ohio State. Now you get to this pick. 7th round, the third of the 4 7th-round selections for this Rams team. 249th selection, defensive end out of Mizzou, Michael Sam. Wow. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. Co-defensive player of the year in the SEC. And I'm not making this about his sexual orientation. I'm not here for that. To me, I don't care about any of that. I'm here to talk football. It was a landmark in terms of the first openly gay player to be drafted in the National Football League. He still hasn't made this team, so nothing here is definite or is definitive. But let's just talk about Michael Sam, the football player. That's all I want to do. And so I went back, watched some tape of this guy, and because I'm going to tell you what, at the Combine, man, was I disappointed in this guy or what? I mean, this guy looked lethargic. He looked pathetic at the Combine. He looked like he was trying hard, but he wasn't really getting a lot of results out of what he was doing. I mean, the 40 was bad. He didn't look fluid. They put him out in the linebacker drills. Man, did he struggle or what? I mean, he was totally a fish out of water in the linebacker drills. Not only at the Combine, but even at the Senior Bowl, he struggled at the drills, at the linebacker drills. So that's not his expertise. That's not what he's here to do. He already told everyone that would listen, look, I go after the quarterback. I hunt. I don't do anything else. And that's precisely what he does. He can get in the backfield, knife in, and make an occasional tackle for a loss at the defensive end position. But his strength is going to be getting to the quarterback. Now, you ask, well, what does he do well? Because when I watched him at the Combine, by watching the 40 and looking at his broad jump, and especially the vertical jump. That vertical leap was terrible. Terrible. Okay? We're talking 25 inches. My grandfather could do 25 inches. And he's not even alive. So, man, that's pretty bad. And so that tells you he lacks explosion. Okay? But when you turn on the tape, he's got a very, very elusive and deceptive first step. I mean, he gets around tackles pretty easily. Now, he's not fast, but he's quick. Quicker than fast. You hear that term a lot. He's quicker than fast. We know he's not fast, but he gets around the edge and he sneaks up on you. And before you can start to run away, he's at full speed. You're just getting started. He gets the sack. He's going to get hustle sacks. He's going to get sacks where your tackle just doesn't come out of his stance fast enough. I feel like if you put him in front of elite tackles, he's going to struggle. You put him in front of guys that aren't as elite, that don't get out of their stance fast enough, he's going to go by them and get a chance to get pressure on the quarterback. So when I look at Michael Sam, even at Missouri, they used to take him off the field. They didn't have him on the field all the time. They would platoon him in and out of the lineup. He's a situational pass rusher is what he is. If he comes onto this team, makes an impact in camp, shows them that, hey, not only am I a guy that was co-defensive player of the year in the SEC last year, but I can get pressure on the quarterback. You know, forget about all the measurables, forget about all the things that I did at the Combine and at the Senior Bowl and at the Pro Day. Forget about all that stuff. I'm here to prove to you that I can do one thing and one thing only. Get to the quarterback. I'll provide some depth for you on special teams if need be, which, of course, he's going to have to do. And so he's going to have to come, win a roster spot, and get pressure on the quarterback. If he can do those two things, get pressure on the quarterback and provide extra depth on special teams, he'll end up on this roster. Simple as that. And there's nothing else to talk about. Gay, not gay, all that stuff is irrelevant. If the man can play football, the man can get pressure on the quarterback, he will be a St. Louis Ram. If he shows up and he struggles in camp and guys put him to sleep out there at defensive end and he can't get to the quarterback and he's struggling to get around the corner because his hips are very stiff, he can't bend that well. And he's got a low center of gravity. He's like 6'2", so he's got to use that to his advantage, and he's got to use that lower center of gravity to jack tackles up into the quarterback. He's got to get an array of moves because right now that speed rush to the outside with a rip, that's all he's got, and that's not going to be enough because he's not dynamic enough of a pass rusher to just have one move. He needs to develop more moves. So these are all things that he's going to have to work on. And if he does a good enough job of it before time is up and they start cutting these rosters down, he'll be on the team. If not, it's a nice story. He's become famous. He'll be able to get himself a show on Oprah or something like that, the OWN network, you know, and do some things there. But it's all about what he can provide for this Rams team if he's going to make this roster. And that's the end of the discussion right there. So in the 7th round, 249th overall selection, defensive man out of Missouri. I'm going to give him a double because the guy comes in with production, co-defensive player of the SEC. You cannot sleep on that. And the fact that the guy can play football, I think, is an added plus. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt here and say he's got a shot to make this roster. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Are you going to be able to get pressure on the quarterback? Are you going to be able to provide depth on special teams or not? If you can, you'll make the roster. If you can't, you won't be in the National Football League. I'll give him a double because I think the guy has some ability. Watching the tape, he took over that Florida game. I mean, he was everywhere. He was in the backfield, tackles for loss, 3 sacks, batted some balls down. He was everywhere in that Florida game. And so he can do that at times. But can he do that at the next level? That's the big question. And finally, you wrap up the draft. 250th overall selection, center out of Tennessee State, Demetrius Rainey. Poor Demetrius Rainey. I think the draft stopped at pick 249 after Sam was selected. Nobody even remembers this guy getting picked at 250, the very next pick after Michael Sam. And I watched this. Man, this looked like high school tape. Boy, this was bad. And I'm going to tell you right now, I wasn't impressed with what I saw. And the little that I did see didn't make me say, wow. You know, this is the thing. When I turn on small school tape, when I put on footage of a guy playing at a small school, I don't want to ask. I don't need to try to find out and do homework on what your number is. I need you to jump off the page at me. I need to look at the game tape and say, okay, that's the guy that I'm looking for right there. He's the guy dominating. I didn't see that out of Demetrius Rainey. Okay? And so, with that being said, now I will say this. In the run game, he was knocking guys down. I mean, every other play, it seemed like he was pancaking somebody. But I was looking around like, I could play defensive line against the teams he was playing. I mean, I saw some guys out there that looked like they were $150. I'm like, is this high school football or what? I mean, it was that bad. And so, kind of hard to really put a lot of stock into what I saw out of Demetrius Rainey. But again, he's a 7th round selection, 250th overall. Long shot to make this roster. It's a single. Simply put, last pick of the draft for the Rams, center out of Tennessee State. And so, you look at the whole draft top to bottom for this Rams team. They had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 selections. You get a home run in the form of Greg Robinson in the 1st round, as well as Aaron Donald in the 1st round. You get a triple for LaMarcus Joyner. So you're looking at 11. You get a double out of Trey Mason, that's 13. A double out of Mo Alexander in the 4th round, that's 15. You get a double out of EJ Gaines, that's 17 in the 6th round. Basically, 4 singles from Gilbert, Van Dyke, Bryant, and Rainey, and a double from Michael Sam. So you total it all up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 16, 23 divided by, it's a double. It's a solid double for the St. Louis Rams here in the 2014 NFL Draft wrap-up. I thought that the beginning of this draft, I really like what they did with the first 6 picks from Gaines to Robinson. I thought this draft was extremely strong. Where you started to kind of get stuck in the mud was down here. And look, it's the 6th round. It's 4 7th rounders. That stuff tends to happen. But for the picks that matter, and that's the first 6th rounder all the way up to the 1st round, I think the Rams had themselves a whale of a draft. But when it's all said and done, it's a solid double in the gap for the St. Louis Rams in the 2014 NFL Draft wrap-up. And so, if it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here in the lab room. I thank you for joining me. We'll continue on this trek through the entire National Football League here in the 2014 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series. See you next time.
Draft Zone.
Like the content? Want more? Sub up.
Mm.